A week ago, India sided with Palestine and voted against the United States' decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Today, Palestine has stabbed India in the back. Their envoy to Pakistan shared stage with a global terrorist, Hafiz Saeed. This was at a rally organized by a group of Islamists known for their campaign against India. Is this how Palestine repays India's support at the United Nations? By backing a man who masterminded one of the worst terror attacks on Indian soil. We are talking about the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks in which 160 people were killed. That gruesome attack was orchestrated by none other than Hafiz Saeed, the man that the Palestinian envoy proudly shared a stage with today. So what is the message they are sending to New Delhi? Is Palestine legitimizing terror? Here's the top story on Gravitas tonight.
These images were clicked on Friday morning in Rawalpindi. The man on your screens is Walid Abu Ali, Palestine's ambassador to Pakistan. He is sharing the stage with Hafiz Saeed, the terrorist who masterminded the Mumbai attacks. The Palestinian ambassador and Hafiz Saeed were attending a large rally organized by Difai Pakistan Council. This is an alliance of Islamist groups in Pakistan, which is known for its campaign to break Pakistan's ties with the United States and India. This new alliance comes days after India, alongside 127 countries, backed Palestine's stance on Jerusalem at the United Nations General Assembly. The vote led to the passage of a resolution which opposed US President Donald Trump's decision to declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. India's position on the Jerusalem dispute has been consistent. New Delhi continues to back the two-state solution, and despite India's close ties with Israel, the Modi government offered its unwavering support to the Palestinian cause back in May. In recent time, the United Nations has passed 16 resolutions related to Palestine. India has voted in favor of 15 of them. One resolution passed without vote. Now, right under the nose of the Pakistani military establishment and days after the Palestinian envoy met the Pakistani Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, this rally has sent a new signal to New Delhi. It also seems to validate Saeed's growing clout in the Pakistani political establishment. Should India now reconsider its diplomatic support to the Palestinian cause? Bureau Report, WION.
So what is this new alliance all about? It seems like Hafiz Saeed could be taking cues from the Hamas playbook. There is resemblance between the cases of Palestine and Pakistan. Hamas, remember, gained prominence through its suicide bombings and rocket attacks against Israel. In fact, the charter of Hamas calls for the destruction of Israel. Hamas refuses to recognize the legitimacy of that country. Its leaders publicly spew venom against Israeli leadership. Does that sound familiar? Here's more. Hamas set up robust networks of social services to serve the Palestinians. They called it their humanitarian gesture. In 2016, they entered politics and won a slim majority in the legislative elections of Palestine. Hamas governs the state of Gaza independently of the Palestinian Authority. So Hamas, which began as an outfit in 1987 with suicide bombings against Israel, the first intifada, now has a legitimate place in the political landscape of Palestine. Hafiz Saeed has similar ambitions. We know that he has masterminded the Mumbai terror attacks in 2008. He has the support from the Pakistani military that turns a blind eye towards the so-called humanitarian causes which serve as a front for the Lashkar's terror activities. And now we have the Milli Muslim League, the MML, which is an offshoot of the Jamaat ud-Dawa, Hafiz Saeed's organization. With the military backing a plan to bring radicals to the mainstream in Pakistan, there's little that we have to say. All we have to say, in fact, now is for you to join the dots. And joining us this evening, Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti is a former Deputy Ambassador to Israel, also a distinguished fellow at the ORF, former Secretary at the Ministry of External Affairs in India. We have Dr. Wael Awad, writer and political analyst, someone who understands this region very well. And from Tel Aviv, we have Mir Javed Anfar, West Asia expert. Good evening to all of you. Mir, let's begin with you. You were talking to us, you were live with us on WION on the day of the vote where India voted against the U.S. decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. You also spoke to us when Donald Trump made that announcement. Now the Palestinians have chosen to repay India in this fashion by sharing stage, their official sharing stage, with none other than Hafiz Saeed. How do you see this?
Well, I think it looks like the Palestinians are following a new Pakistani strategy, which Pakistan has said recently publicly that they are putting the question of Kashmir on par with the question of Palestine. And the Palestinians are playing along with that. And they are going along the statements being made by the Pakistani government regarding Kashmir and supporting the line of the Pakistani government when it comes to the question of Kashmir. And this seems to be the continuation of such a policy which started earlier this year. This is not the first time that we see the Pakistanis are making such a statement in presence of Palestinian officials. Even at the meeting of the Organization of Islamic Countries, the Pakistanis also made such a statement that they want the question of Pakistan, the question of Kashmir, to be treated on the same level as question of Palestine. And I think such a meeting not only is in line with such a strategy, it shows that the Palestinians are going along and playing with that. What they hope to achieve from this, to be quite honest, I'm not sure. It's one thing to be speaking to Pakistani officials, but to share a platform with the mastermind of such a terror organization who has carried out such a terrible massacre in Mumbai, it is going too far, and I think it's going to cost the Palestinians, especially in a country as important as India.
Dr. Awad, how should New Delhi see this?
Well, I think we should not read much of the story. I know it is a sentiment. It hurt the sentiment of many Indians because of the sharing of the dais. But let us remember that I was watching the whole YouTubes of the episode which have been taking place. All of those, the Islamic leader in Pakistan who have taken part in this rally, where there was not a single mention of India, was an anti-India sentiment on that. So therefore, I would like to separate the two issues here, because I think the ambassador who was there, he has to answer. He should be answering to his own Palestinian Authority. How did he share with this? Because I think the rally was organized in support of Al-Quds because of the recent development, as you know. And therefore, there will be all the Islamists, all the fundamentalists, all the sympathizers with the Palestinians who feel that this is a way of showing their support to them. I think sharing, either he is ignorant of the fact that he is a terrorist or he is wanted by India. And I think the government of Palestine has to give this response to the Indian Authority. And I'm sure that there is no change whatsoever in the Palestinian of the respect and regard for Indian position. Let us remember that India, it was the first non-Arab country which recognized the Palestinian as a state and has given them the embassy in Delhi.
I'm afraid I disagree with you. This is no way to show respect and regard. This is an official representative of the state of Palestine sharing stage, and they should understand diplomacy is based on cold calculation, yes, but it's also based on respecting the sentiments of another country. And India, as we said in our report just a short while back, of the 16 recent UN resolution backed Palestine in 15, and in one a vote wasn't passed. So that's something that the Palestinians should take note of. Mir Javed Anfar, do you also see Hafiz Saeed taking inspiration from the way Hamas tried to legitimize its actions? It's a terror group, and yet it's a political party now, and it is in power in Palestine.
I think that Pakistan is more importantly, more than anything else, Hafiz Saeed and his terrorist organization Lashkar-e-Taiba, which carried out terrorist organizations, is trying to achieve international legitimacy. It has already legitimacy in Pakistan. You see the Pakistani government is treating them as a political organization. This terrorist leader was released even after we know what happened in Mumbai and the responsibility of this organization. What they're hoping is that by putting themselves on par with the Palestinians and involving Palestinian officials in events which has included Hafiz Saeed, they are hoping that the international community will now put a hyphen between them. Kashmir-Palestine or Palestine-Kashmir, and to bring this on par in the international arena, in the media, in the international organizations such as the United Nations, so that in order to promote the Pakistani view of how the Kashmir issue should be viewed, and that it should be viewed and treated just as the Palestinian issue is treated. I think that, so to answer your question, I think the page in the playbook which they're taking out of the book of Hamas is more involved in the international arena. They're hoping to gain the international support for the group of the Hafiz al-Said by being involved as much as possible in issues related to Palestine.
Dr. Awad, your thoughts on this? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Hamas is one of the first such organizations, terrorist organizations that turned into a political outfit, that calls itself a political outfit, and yet carries on its terrorist activities, including launching rockets on Israeli installations.
Well, let me be clear with you here. It's not a matter of I'm supporting or mis-supporting this faction or no. I do not believe in any of those leaders, neither in both the sides of the leadership of the Palestinian, because what's happening in the Palestinian territories, it is regarding the Palestinian people, the suffering of the Palestinian under occupation for the last 70 years. And if I have to speak more on this, it is more of the public opinion rather than a leader who has been corrupted or uncorrupted. Now, to speak that they are a terrorist organization, basically everybody linked to occupation and resistance to occupation to the Israeli occupation. I do not link Kashmir in this issue at all with Palestinian. Whoever linked these two issues is politically naive, because the two issues is definitely
No, that's not what I'm linking. What I'm saying is that Hafiz Saeed is trying to do in Pakistan what Hamas has already done 10 years back in Palestine.
Balki, this is a very, they are trying to harvest on the emotion of the Palestinian, of the Islamic views of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is holy for the Jewish, holy for the Palestinian, for the Muslim, and for the Christian as well. So therefore, such kind of rally, because they know the sentiment of the public, maybe he is trying to gain the support, or he wanted to have the image that he is a front runner for the Palestinian. But I think he is doing more harm than helping the Palestinian cause. And that's why I'm saying in this issue, emotion does not build up nation. Let us see the reaction from the authority of the Palestinian, what brought the Palestinian ambassador to this. And then we will find out the relation between India and Palestine and the Arab world is far beyond a person of such category that he has sat with him on the dais for a small a gesture, and he has done the great damage to the Palestinian cause. I agree with you on this. I know it is a terrorist organization, that they have been accused and they have been involved in the carnage in Bombay. We condemned it, and even the Palestinian condemned such act. Now, how these two sat together on the dais, that's not my answer to this, actually.
How did they end up together? Mir, is it very difficult to figure out? He's a diplomat. We understand what sort of resources they have at their disposal to understand what could be the fallout of a particular course of action. We know how diplomats conduct themselves in a foreign country and the kind of calculations they make. So it couldn't have been his individual decision, wouldn't you say?
Look, conventionally speaking, when diplomats turn up at an event, they're usually told who is going to be there. So if we're speaking conventionally, if the Pakistani foreign minister, or if the Pakistani authorities followed convention, they would have told him that Hafiz al-Said is going to be there, and he would have known. Okay, so based on that, he would have known. But we also cannot rule out the possibility, if I can be fair, is that he was also tricked. Perhaps that they tricked him. We cannot also forego that possibility. In either way, I think the ambassador Abu Ali would have known who is this person, who Hafiz Saeed is, and what his background is. And I think, sharing a stage with him, even if he was tricked into being there, even if he wasn't involved, even if he wasn't informed that Hafiz Saeed is going to be there, I think he should have left the stage, because Hafiz Saeed is no ordinary person that we are talking about. I think whatever happens, this will cost the Palestinians. It was a mistake, but we have to also recognize the fact that the Pakistanis are making a concerted effort, an organized effort to put these issues together, the issue of Kashmir and Palestine together, and they are as responsible. And I think this is not going to be the last time that we're going to hear the Pakistanis trying to put these issues together, whatever they can. It can be through events like this, or it can be through another event, or books or articles or presentations or future speeches by the leaders in the international
There's a world
community.
of difference between Palestine and Kashmir, and no matter how hard Pakistan tries to equate the two, the discerning would understand. And the question we are raising is not on what Pakistan is doing, because that's what we expect from Pakistan. The question is, why did the Palestinians behave the way they did? Sushant Sareen, someone who is an authority on foreign affairs, is also joining us. Sushant, how should the government of India look at this shoddy way of repaying India's gestures of supporting the Palestinian cause at the United Nations?
Palki, before I answer your question, I find it really bizarre that if the ambassador of Palestine doesn't know what the Defy Pakistan Council is, surely he would have known who has organized this particular event. And the Defy Pakistan Council is a virtual rogues gallery. It has all sorts of terrorist elements in it. Now, if the guy doesn't know that, he does not deserve to be an ambassador of a para-state or a state or whatever that Palestinian Authority is all about. Number one. Number two, I disagree with Professor Dr. Awad when he says that, this was, he tried to sidestep this whole issue. I want to ask all these Arabs and all these Palestinians and all these fellows, if it comes to China and China's core interests, will they treat China in as cavalier a manner as us? They take us for granted, and have we brought this situation upon ourselves that a country like Israel, which has always stood by us during the toughest times we have had, we always go and vote against them, and for whom? For these fellows who always vote against us, who never take care of our core interests. So I more this fellow, this so-called ambassador, and what he has done, I have a question from my own government. What kind of a foreign policy are we following? And what kind of people do we think are our friends when clearly they are not? And suddenly, this whole concept, this fake concept of Ummah becomes alive, and suddenly they discover Islamic heritage and what have you, and all the friendship and all the sacrifice and all the money and treasure which India has spent on these fellows, suddenly forgotten. And this business of equating Palestine with Kashmir, the Pakis have of course been trying to do it. They've been doing it for some time, and this ambassador of Palestine has also gone and met the Pakistani army chief, where this same thing was this conflation was done, and he went along with it. So the point is that I think India should now start looking at its own interests, and to treat a relationship as important as Israel in as cavalier a manner as we have been doing. I think we have received our just desserts today, I really think we need to reevaluate this whole Palestinian question and the fact that how the Palestinians have been very obdurate in some very generous offers which have come their way on the two-state solution. And this is something that we need to now start, this holy foreign policy mantra which we have been repeating for the last 70 years. I think it's about time we stop. And if the Arabs expect something from us, I think it is legitimate for them to give something to us. So on political matters, especially on Indo-Pak matters or on an issue of core concern like Kashmir, what has been the gift from the Arab side? They go to these OIC conferences, they pass all sorts of stupid resolutions. How does it work? So I think it's about time that there has to be a quid pro quo on these kind of issues. And if they're not willing to do it, then I don't see any reason and any compulsion why India should keep going, and keep defending these lost causes of the world and following the kind of completely fruitless policies of the past, which have not led to any dividend and have not served India's national interest in any which way.
I couldn't agree more with you, and these are the facts of the case. The Israelis were the first ones to come to India offering help when the Kargil war broke out.
Just add one more thing.
Just a second, Sushant.
One thing. Sure. I have a question, Dr. Awad. If tomorrow, supposing the Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State was to organize a rally because they were supporting this whole business of Al-Quds and, Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, will the Palestinian Authority be okay with their ambassador or their envoy or some minister of theirs going and attending such a conference or such a public meeting? I want to ask this question because as far as I am concerned, Hafiz Saeed or the Islamic State of Pakistan is as bad as the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria as far as I am concerned.
Dr. Awad?
Well, I agree with my colleague Sushant, and we have been together many times. My view is very clear, and I myself, in my personal view, I condemn such kind of act. I always condemned any kind of a terrorist attack on India, and we have been the forefront. In fact, we have been supporting India all through in our position, even in the OIC. If I'm a Syrian now, I have to speak as a Syrian. We have already had reservation whenever it comes to resolution against India and the OIC. Syria, Iraq, and Algeria has been the forefront. I don't want to link the two issues here. One thing I would like to mention here very clearly is that when India voted, it did not vote because of it is a Palestinian or they are favoring the Palestinian against the Israeli. No. India supported the international law, the adherence of the UN Security Council resolution, UN Charter, where there is a territory under occupation, you cannot gift it to another country because of they have used the force. That's a separate issue. The issue here is, yes, he is a terrorist. He's been accused in India. They should have realized the sentiment of the Indian, and I condemn it as a person. And such kind of act, we should not even support any kind of person who kill any human being. That is my take now and for the last 40 years of my career as a correspondent and political analyst. I never changed my view on this issue.
What I want to tell our viewers is that Israel has no diplomatic ties with Pakistan. India has. The Palestinians have ties with both the countries. India has supported the Palestinian cause, and Israel has always come to New Delhi's aid. Look at the equation and look at the paradox here. Sushant, my very limited question to you is, what is the message that Palestine is now trying to send to New Delhi, and how should New Delhi course correct, and what should it demand of Palestine? An apology, would that do?
I don't think an apology is enough. I think what the Palestinians need to clarify is what exactly happened. And a mere apology is not going to be enough, number one. And number two, I think it is a wake-up call for India that we need to review our entire, these stands that we've been taking in the past. I think we need to review those, and we need to start voting in a way that, nobody thinks that we are pushovers. Clearly, these Palestinians have thought that these namby-pamby country called India, which can be pushed around, which you can do flirtation with their enemies, and there will be no consequences. I think unless there are consequences, this thing will be repeated again, and there should be consequences for these Palestinians.
Indeed. I'm going to thank you all. Mayor Javed Anfar from Tel Aviv, Dr. Wael Awad from New Delhi, and Sushant Sareen also from New Delhi. Thank you very much. This is indeed disappointing, to say the least, for India, given the kind of support it has shown the Palestinians. We haven't heard the last of this. We have to wait for the Ministry of External Affairs to come up with a statement on this as well. The economic crisis in Venezuela has given rise to a diplomatic face-off in a land Washington has long considered its backyard. Here's a report.
It was once the richest country in South America, but now it is in desperate need of cash. And in these tough times, Venezuela is becoming more and more dependent on Russia and China. This new triangle could have some serious strategic implications for the US. Moscow and Beijing are more than willing to give Venezuela a helping hand. With its oil reserves, Venezuela is likely to be an attractive long-term gamble for both countries. And let's not forget, Putin and Xi Jinping's ambitions to assert greater influence in a region that the US has long regarded as its backyard. Over the past decade, Beijing has loaned Venezuela a whopping $65 billion. Now Russia has swooped in, bearing debt relief. This comes at a time when Venezuela is becoming increasingly isolated. The country's diplomatic relations with Brazil and Canada are at an all-time low. Earlier this year, Venezuela was suspended from a trading bloc, which includes Brazil and Argentina, for failing to uphold the democratic clause in the alliance's charter. Amidst a diplomatic freeze and an economic crisis, President Nicolas Maduro is making increasingly enthusiastic overtures to China and Russia. During a visit to Russia in October, the Venezuelan leader thanked President Vladimir Putin for all the political and diplomatic support. A month later, Russia and Venezuela signed a debt restructuring deal that will allow Caracas to repay a total of $3.15 billion to Moscow over a 10-year period, with minimal repayments in the first 6 years. Now Putin wants his pound of flesh. Reports suggest that the Russian president is demanding that Venezuela allow Russian warships to anchor at its ports in return for assistance. If Caracas agrees, Russia would have a new military foothold in America's backyard. Putin is already undercutting US strategies on Syria and North Korea. Add Venezuela to his list of arsenal, and he could really make America nervous. And Trump is already feeling the heat. When the US president unveiled his America First national security strategy, Trump specifically named China and Russia as competition that seek to challenge American power, influence and interests.
We also face rival powers, Russia and China, that seek to challenge American influence, values and wealth. We will attempt to build a great partnership with those and other countries, but in a manner that always protects our national interest.
Now with China and more significantly Russia making inroads into the Americas, the geopolitical shift is reminiscent of the Cold War. Bureau Report, WION.
So how did paradise get lost? How did Venezuela go from being the richest country in South America, a country having one of the largest oil reserves in the world, to a country in debt? Let's break it down for you. When oil was $100 a barrel, billions flowed through the state-owned petroleum company and were siphoned off for social programs and food subsidies. But when oil prices fell dramatically, those massive subsidies became unsustainable. Crashing oil prices also left the government with less foreign currency to buy goods from other countries. Venezuela's imports are down 50% from a year ago. Venezuela's central bank has only $9.6 billion left. It owes over $60 billion to bondholders, and the financial clock is ticking. So what are the crisis points in Venezuela's economic meltdown? Its inflation rate, which has been over 50% since 2014, reached 536% in the current year. The International Monetary Fund estimates that inflation will reach more than 2,000% by 2018. The government controls the price of basic goods, but the black market still has a powerful influence on prices. Prices of basic goods, in fact, can change in a matter of days, causing severe food shortages in the country. Venezuela's oil production, which has been falling by about 20,000 barrels per day since last year, is on track to fall by at least 250,000 barrels per day in 2017. President Nicolas Maduro has dismissed the possibility of a default, adding that Venezuela would instead work on refinancing and restructuring its foreign debt. The economic crisis is hitting Venezuela's public health system the hardest. In the country's public hospitals, medicine and equipment are increasingly not available. That's how things stand. And joining us is a very special guest, the Venezuelan ambassador to India, Augusto Montiel. Ambassador Montiel, thank you very much for very patiently listening to our report and joining us here this evening. We've seen what China has done in this region, the debt trap as we call it, the checkbook diplomacy. We've seen what Russia has done in West Asia, the way Vladimir Putin now essentially rules the roost and calls the shots. And yet, given these examples, despite these examples, it seems that President Maduro has welcomed these two countries with open arms to come and take majority stakes, major stakes in some of the oil installations.
I don't know where you're getting, by the way, good evening, excellent, and thank you for the invitation.
Sure. And
hello and good evening to everybody watching this interesting program. But we don't know where you're getting all of these complete conclusions, because Russia has been in Venezuela investing in oil for many years, so has China, and the United States has been investing in oil in Venezuela for the last 120 years. So is India. In the last 9 years, all NGC and Indian Oil have been there investing. The Norwegian state company is there, Statoil. The Spanish Repsol, the Italian.
So why is Donald Trump getting worried?
Sorry?
Why is Donald Trump getting worried? Why did he mention only
because
Russia and
Donald
China?
Trump is getting worried that many people around the world, for example, are worried about climate change. But he says that climate change is not true.
This is not about climate change. This is about what's happening in your country, which
So
is an
you're
oil-rich
asking
country.
me-
And I question America's interest in promoting democracy in
Yes.
Venezuela and not in other African poorer nations, because Venezuela is an oil-rich country and America has interests. I understand that part.
Yes.
And yet, what I don't understand is why the Venezuelan leader wants to invite someone like the Chinese to buy stakes in, infrastructure projects.
Been trying to tell you that Russia's Rosneft, for example, has been there in Venezuela for the last 12 years. And China has been there also producing oil in the largest oil reserve in Venezuela for almost 2 decades. So what is the point? I mean, what points are being trying to make? And you asked me, why then is Donald Trump worried? I saw him smiling when he came out of China with a $250 billion arrangement with 37 deals with China. So every country wants to obviously focus on development. And in Venezuela, and this is something also that in your report was not presented, and of course WION News, as a good research unit of news, knows and understands Venezuela is the object of economic attacks from the government of the United States, and at the moment and for the last 4 years, Venezuela has been blockaded economically, financially, commercially. No ships are arriving in Venezuelan ports because the United States government wants to topple the Venezuelan government.
So do you
want to create
there is a sense of
social and
desperation?
political destabilization.
Let me quote an expert, Mari Carmen Aponte. He served in the Obama administration as a top diplomat for Latin America.
Who is she? From which country?
From the U.S.
Okay, from the U.S.
From the U.S. And she said, and I'm quoting, Maduro is essentially alone, doesn't have the wherewithal to survive without allies, and these allies know that they're manipulating him very effectively.
So, which means that what I'm saying is totally true. And you're saying that they are surrounding Venezuela and they are trying to create chaos in Venezuela.
So you agree with me that in his desperation, President Maduro is having to negotiate from a position of weakness with countries like Russia and China?
Donald Trump threatens Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro with military action. Donald Trump launches new financial sanctions against dictatorship in Venezuela. Venezuela has had 3 in the year 2017, which was not in WION's report tonight, 3 elections. Municipal elections, 335 municipal mayors were elected. 52% of the population went to vote.
I didn't call him a dictator, and I'm not going to comment on what Donald Trump has said. My question is,
just 2 weeks ago,
what is your government doing to come out of the economic crisis this is in?
I'm
and is this becoming the new turf for a war of influence between the Russians and the Americans?
That's right. Venezuelan government and the Venezuelan people and the Venezuelan state cannot let another country like the government of the United States destabilize our country. And they are trying to do that. And obviously, if you block a country and if you apply illegal, internationally illegal sanctions, which are not sanctions, they are attacks on Venezuela. WION News knows that these sanctions have been applied for the last 4 years, and they are not sanctions. They are a blockade, because Venezuela has an independent and a sovereign government, and the people of Venezuela go out to vote. So President Maduro is not alone. President Maduro is not isolated. 54% of the people in Venezuela support President Maduro, and that has been clearly and universally shown in the last 3 elections this year. And next year there will be presidential elections in Venezuela, and the opposition is participating in all elections in Venezuela.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And next year the inflation will also shoot through the roof, and I hope
How
President
can
Maduro
there
has a
not be
plan in place.
inflation if a country like the United States, through its government, is blockading Venezuela? The United States is not, for example, the United States is trying to stop Venezuela from producing oil, and ONGC and Indian Oil bringing oil to India.
Sure.
Venezuela is bringing oil into India. Almost 20% of the oil that comes to India comes from Venezuela, and that has been happening for the last 9 years. And you are also Indian companies are producing oil together with us in the largest oil reserve in Venezuela. Therefore, this is not about economics. This is about geostrategy. This is about politics. This is about trying to bring down.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
A government.
Okay. My unsolicited advice then is to look at the allies that Venezuela is looking to work with, China and Russia. Thanks very much. Appreciate as always, Joy.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
International cooperation is very important, and
Absolutely.
Venezuela is there to cooperate with all countries.
Absolutely. 2017, we know, was a year of tension for Venezuela. Hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans were part of massive protests and these rallies against the constitutional amendment proposed by President Nicolas Maduro. And despite the opposition, he managed to push ahead with these amendments, which have led to the creation of the National Assembly, among other things. And this is a move that allows the president of Venezuela to stay on power. His moves have not gone down very well with the global community, especially in the West. The European Union and the United States have slapped sanctions, as the ambassador just pointed out, crippling the country's already sinking economy. The bitter war of words between President Maduro and US President Donald Trump has been witnessed by one and all. On one occasion, President Maduro accused the US of promoting a coup in his country. Back in July, President Maduro lashed out at President Donald Trump just before an election for the new assembly.
¿A quién obedecemos? ¿Quién manda en Venezuela? Le digo al emperador Donald Trump, en Venezuela manda el pueblo de Venezuela. Y el domingo 30 de julio, la constituyente sí va.
The US president did not back down. He attacked President Maduro through his tweets and statements. He even raised the crisis in Venezuela on the floor of the United Nations General Assembly.
The Venezuelan people are starving, and their country is collapsing. Was one of the wealthiest countries in the world for a long period of time, and now the people are starving and the country is collapsing. Who would think that's possible? Their democratic institutions are being destroyed. The situation is completely unacceptable.
And we had more to discuss on this, but I'm completely out of time on this edition of Gravitas, leaving you with Gravitas Images. Thanks very much for watching.